Governor, I want to take the balance of my time to talk to you because I'm interested in what Colorado has done in terms of your leadership with the state's regulatory system. You indicate that Colorado could be this national model. You speak very, very highly of what you have been able to accomplish in terms of the balance. I happen to believe that the other states should be those models, just as Colorado is that model. And again, as a former geologist, a recovering geologist, or whatever, you recognize that in your state and in your region, you want to make sure that things work for you. I guess my question to you is, given that you feel pretty comfortable with your state's regulatory system and what you have built there, do you think that we need new federal rules on top of what Colorado already has in place to provide for further levels of safety or assurance, or does it add another layer and perhaps an unnecessary regulatory layer?
Well, historically, the way the regulatory environment traditionally works in this country is the states are the laboratories, and we are now, there are other states that are aggressive in creating their own integrated and comprehensive regulatory environment. And we, through the National Governors Association, and you former governors know how competitive governors can be, but we also collaborate. And so the Republican Governor Mary Fallon from Oklahoma, she and I went to Detroit last June to try and convince automobile manufacturers that they should do more compressed natural gas vehicles right off the assembly line. At the same time, we're looking at how do we take our regulatory environments and have those 30 states where we are facing the issues of innovation technologies and horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, and how can we work together to create a template where we would have sufficient flexibility to respond to the different environments in different states, the different depth of the shale, the different quality of the rock, but at the same time allow us to move towards some level of federal regulation. So I think ultimately we will get to that federal regulation. I want to make sure that the states work together in terms of making sure we don't put one state or another at disadvantage.
So then, in addition to what you already have within your state, you think that additional federal regulation on top of that is a wise thing?
Well, I think what would happen would the federal regulations, I think, would probably be modeled after a group of states. It wouldn't be in addition to. They would, you know, we talked to Secretary Salazar when he was at the Interior in terms of what the appropriate regulation would be for BLM land. And what we came up with was Wyoming, Colorado, Utah all have fairly strict transparency rules around frac fluids, some of the same basic regulatory environments, very aggressive about escaped fugitive methane. We got to the point where, and we haven't done this yet, but we're talking about having one application form that you would send if you wanted to drill a well in Colorado or Wyoming on BLM land. It would be the same form that you send into the state. So you send the same form to the federal government as to the state. So I mean, isn't that the ultimate goals? We're trying to get the different states and the federal government to work together so we cut the red tape and yet still maintain a very, very, very high and rigorous set of regulatory environments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm well over my time, but it seems to me that we're talking about regions, not necessarily one level of federal overlay. But I'd like to pursue this conversation further with you, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Since I have you, I just want to talk to you a little bit about, and I'll do this very quickly because I'm running out of time. The 2005 Energy Policy Act exempted underground injections associated with fracking from Federal Safe Drinking Water Act jurisdiction. The only exemption was for fracking fluids that use diesel. Now, we've had concerns over groundwater contamination that have been raised, even documented by EPA in places like Pavilion, Wyoming. You've developed regulations in your state that include disclosure of chemicals that are used. Have these regulations prevented your state from sustaining a strong natural gas industry? I think I know the answer, but I want to ask you.
No, not at all. But I think the key there is to make sure that all the actors are at the table. And so that as you're recognizing, one of the real issues when we sat down with the executives from Halliburton, they have a frac fluid that is made out of food additives. You can drink it. We did drink it around the tables. almost ritual-like in a funny way. But it demonstrated that
It was
this
like a pact.
not like a pact. It was a demonstration.
with-
A demonstration. We had environmental community representatives. We had industry representatives. Everybody around the table.
It's not an occult.
No, it was not a cult.
Okay.
There were no religious overtures
Yeah.
in any sense. But I think the key was that that's a more expensive. They've invested millions of dollars to create what is really a benign fluid in every sense. It doesn't have benzene or any of the other components that we generally get from crude oil or hydrocarbons. So, but if we were overly zealous in forcing them to disclose what they had created, they wouldn't bring it into our state. So it was an alignment of self-interest to make sure that we had a regulatory environment where they could protect their investment in their intellectual property, but at the same time be sufficiently transparent so that the Environmental Defense Fund, the NRDC, the representatives of environmental quality were willing to say, all right, this is sufficiently transparent. We understand what's being pumped into the ground.